Hey everybody, this is Cameron, and today I have a interview with Mark Frost. Not with me, unfortunately. Maybe one day. But an article just dropped by the website NME by author Gary Ryan, and he interviews Mark Frost about Twin Peaks. So let's take a look at what he has to say. So this article is named "Inside David Lynch's Plans for Twin Peaks to Return." We had a recipe forming. Co-creator Mark Frost reveals the great surrealist creativity never waned. Now you'll notice that the article dropped today. So this is not about 2017's revival. This is about what they had planned moving forward. 35 years ago, the question of who murdered doomed prom queen Laura Palmer in Twin Peaks was on everybody's lips. Even Queen Elizabeth II cut short a private audience with a beadle at Buckingham Palace to avoid missing the cult TV phenomenon. Paul McCartney told us he had been invited to perform music to celebrate the Queen's birthday, and she had to rush upstairs to see who killed Laura Palmer, remembers Mark Frost, who created the show with visionary director David Lynch. When Hill Street Blues writer Frost teamed up with Lynch, they shifted the small screen's Overton window forever, injecting surrealism and art house style into the mainstream. Fish in the damn fine coffee percolator, backwards talking dreamlike sequences, log carrying oracles, Twin Peaks, spanning 2 series and a 1992 prequel movie, Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, was compulsively weird and acted as a blueprint for future prestige dramas such as Lost and Stranger Things. In 2017, Frost and Lynch reunited for Showtime's uncompromising third lap, aka Twin Peaks: The Return, memorably described as the pure heroine vision of David Lynch. From California, although his Zoom background is aptly the iconic Twin Peaks waterfall, Frost spoke to NME about the enduring influence of the series, the chances of a revival, and the legacy of Lynch, who died in January this year from emphysema. Hello, Mark. Twin Peaks was so radically different in 1990 to the point where even the cast and ABC network executives were unsure of how it would be received. Did David Lynch and yourself trust that audiences would understand it? Frost: we trusted the process. We sat down and wrote the pilot in 3 weeks. It came out in a burst. We'd written together for a couple of years up to that point, and we knew when, as David was fond of saying, you got a big one on the line. Then it was just about, can we realize it and navigate the tricky political circumstances of network television and its limitations at the time? I knew a lot about those limitations, but I felt I had had a blueprint for how to crack the safe. And boy, did you. Rewatching the pilot, it's full of raw grief. Does it hit differently for you following David Lynch's death? Well, I haven't watched it since he left us, and honestly, I don't watch the show very often. I mean, David and I talked a lot about issues like this. When you're working that closely together for the length of time that we knew each other, you get to know another person pretty well. I'm confident to say I don't think he had any fear of death whatsoever, and I think he's doing just fine wherever he may be. What are your favorite memories of working with David Lynch? I remember the laughter. We just cracked each other up. Writing is a hard, solitary experience 99% of the time, but this was different. This was 2 people in a room playing tennis. We found somebody who could return serve, and we could get long volleys going. I don't want to torture the metaphor. And we had a hell of a good time doing it. We enjoyed each other's company. When you work like that, the conversation tends to be wide ranging and involve what's going on in your life and what you think about contemporary issues and eternal issues. All those things are in the hopper. That's what I miss. What made him so special? He was fearlessly creative in the face of anything that came his way, and he was eternally challenging himself to meet that moment and do something more than he had before. It was an ethos and a way of living. He was an artist first, last, and foremost. It was a pleasure to be in his company, to be his friend, and work together as closely as we did. When did you last talk to him? A couple of months before he left us. We talked about his diagnosis of emphysema, what he was facing, and how resolute he was that this wasn't going to diminish his creativity or prevent him from expressing himself. I thought that was very in character. We were friends till the end, and he went out the way he wanted to go. You got to tip your hat to him for that. Now, for you Twin Peaks fans, this is where it's really going to get interesting. Lynch implied that he was interested in expanding the world of Twin Peaks via waitress Carrie Page. Were you talking about continuing the series? Frost says, a little bit, yeah. We had a little bit of a recipe forming. Nothing terribly formal, but it was in the wind. I felt that there were uncertainties about his health, so I didn't press him on it. But nothing really stopped the flow of his creativity. I'm kind of the same way. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Can you say anything about what those tentative plans might have involved? Is it something you can still see happening? Frost. I mean, I honestly don't know yet. It's still kind of too soon, but it's something I'll get around to thinking about long and hard. My thoughts? Mark Frost is going to eventually write another book in the world of Twin Peaks. Even if this is the end of Twin Peaks, at least it bowed out with the return, which was unsparing in its vision. You even turned David Bowie's character into a kettle. Don't let David Lynch hear you say that, though. Frost answers, we were talking to David Bowie about coming back, and he wanted to do it. He obviously was battling serious health issues, liver cancer, and at a certain point, he called us and said, I'm not going to be able to do it. We really thought long and hard about that, and David Lynch tried to and did come up with a startling visual representation of what that might be in the only way he could. And I think David Bowie would have probably got a kick out of it had he been around to see it. I certainly did. David Lynch's speech as FBI Deputy Director Gordon Cole about accepting trans character Denise became a social media rallying cry in the climate of rising transphobia. How did that feel? Frost. The line, fix their hearts or die, became popular, and I couldn't have been happier because Denise was one of the first trans characters on network television. I've had so many people come up to me over the years telling me how much that meant to them. The core of Twin Peaks is the sexual exploitation of young girls by an entire community. Given the headlines we've seen over the past few years about the likes of Jeffrey Epstein, does that seem more timely than ever? Frost. It does. Remember, this all came together at the tail end of the President Ronald Reagan's era in this country, where there was a willful blinding to the underlying ugliness to a lot of, I guess, capitalism or sexual politics that hadn't really yet been addressed. But it was bubbling up under the surface. That's the sort of thing a writer tries to stay attuned to and what we wanted to capture. That there was something rotten in the state of Denmark, even more so 25 years later, as we have seen. I love that he quoted Hamlet. In the age of revivals, Kyle MacLachlan has said he doesn't think anyone should attempt a crazy reboot of Twin Peaks with younger Hollywood stars. What are your thoughts? Mark Frost says, no one's come to me about it, and we own the property. Part of our strategy going in was that this was a world we had created and owned, so nobody could exploit it in a destructive or stupid way. We wanted to stay true of what we had done, and that will certainly be my guiding principle going forward with whatever happens with the show or where it goes from here. We've set a standard that we have to hold ourselves to. So what he's basically saying is while the standards are high, it doesn't sound like Twin Peaks is dead as a doornail anymore. There's always the possibility of a new book, a new series, a new movie. It just has to be the right thing. And so, like I've been saying on this channel for the longest time, the current incarnation of Twin Peaks that Lynch presided over may have come to a close, but that doesn't mean the world of Twin Peaks is over. Do you have a favorite moment of Twin Peaks? Frost says, the episode where we wrap things up in season 2, where they catch the killer, Leland, confesses, and ultimately dies in the jail cell, is an enormously powerful scene. It is indeed, Mark. Another one is more personal to me, which is the first scene we shot in The Return. This is interesting. This was the first scene shot for the revival. It was filmed a year before we started production. My dad, Warren Frost, played Doc Hayward on the show, and that was based on his own father-in-law. Dad was just entering the final stages of his life and battling the onset of dementia. I said, we need to write a scene for him. It's going to have to be like a Zoom call. We came up with a way of doing it at my family's place in upstate New York, where my parents had been married. My dad and mom were there, along with my brother, Scott Frost, who worked on the show. My son, who was 12 at the time, was holding the cue cards for my dad. That's actually quite beautiful. David got on Skype with him and they showed the scene together. It was virtually the last scene he had ever acted in. It's incredibly meaningful, and I felt we had written a scene that was up to the task. That's a moment I'll never let go of. Very nice interview. Sounds like David Lynch and Mark Frost were indeed planning to return to the world of Twin Peaks at some point in some incarnation. Mark Frost is not opposed to continuing the story at a later date. So let me know in the comments what you think. I myself am actually all for this. I love the world of Twin Peaks, and I would love to always see it continue. Anyway, give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. My name is Cameron. Have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.